Hey yo, salute to all my subscribers. Special shout out to everybody else passing through. YouTube, what's good? Hey yo, what's wrong with y'all new niggas, yo? Why y'all acting like Joe Budden is not big enough to challenge M? Why y'all acting like Joe Budden don't have a discography that's respected all throughout the hip-hop culture? Why y'all new niggas acting like just because y'all just learned about Joe because of Love and Hip Hop, because of his podcast, because of Everyday Struggle, why y'all acting like his career in hip hop don't span all the way back to the early 2000s? We're not doing that. People like myself, I'm 34. I was born in 83, right? And I'm not that old. And when I first got exposed to hip hop, it was still in its toddler years. Hip hop was still a preteen. If you want to say hip hop technically started in like the late 70s. So the era that Joe Budden comes from, the era that M comes from, they come from an era, I come from an era in hip-hop when hip-hop was hip-hop. And we're not going to act like Joe Budden is not big enough as a lyricist and like he's not respected enough in the hip-hop culture by other MCs, by his colleagues, his co-workers, for doing this rap shit. Joe raps his ass off. Just because everybody says shit like, oh, Pump It Up was his only hit, da-da-da. No, I'm talking about the true hip-hop fans, not the casual fans, the true hip-hop fans who live and breathe that shit, who have followed that shit since the 80s, the 90s, into the early 2000s, when hip-hop was in its truest form. And when you came at somebody and you was big enough to challenge them, they had to respond to that. And we're not going to act like the last really sick album from Eminem wasn't over a decade ago. We're not going to act like that. For all y'all to jump on YouTube an hour after, 2 hours after Joe drops his hour-long blog rant about, you know, where he's breaking down the whole history between him and M and talking about how, you know, M hasn't really said anything in 10 years and how Joe would clean him up if M really was bold enough to drop a track, fuck that album rollout shit, you know, drop a track that I feel like is worthy of me actually responding to, and I'll clean you up. We're not going to act like that shit is so far-fetched. Because if M and Joe went at it right now, present day 2018 M, I 100% believe that shit would be a lot closer than a lot of y'all think it would be. Because Joe has been one of the most underrated hip-hop artists since his first album debut. And the true hip-hop fans and the true people who really fuck with hip-hop, and even the people in the hip-hop industry, knows that Joe raps his ass off. And rather than just talk about the singles that you might know of or might have had a little bit of buzz from Joe Budden, no, you got to go to the mixtapes. You got to go to the real shit. There has always been real content in his shit. And he's 100% correct when he says, yo, M, he just raps a bunch of words. He just puts a bunch of words together. To somebody like me, who pays attention to more than just your ability to rap and put words together and rhyme, it's more to it than that. There's cadence, there's flow, is the beat, you know, does it sound right? Is it the right pick for that song? I come from an era where there were songs that were concepts, and M used to do that shit. And there was a time when nobody would think about coming at M, wouldn't even consider it. That was a long time ago. It's been at least 10 years. Joe's not lying when he says that. M has an uncanny ability to be able to put words together in a way that no other rapper can do, or very few of them. He can put together similes, multi-syllables, double, triple entendres. He can fit more words inside of a bar than just about any rapper, other than, if I had to mention somebody off the top of my head, Big Pun. Now, do y'all new niggas in this new hip-hop era remember Big Pun? That is what Eminem excels at. And yes, as far as sales go, he is the #1 selling hip-hop artist of all time. He took that title from Tupac, because Pac had that for a while. Y'all got to do y'all research. Because the problem is, y'all ruining hip-hop. And the reason why I say that is because this new metric that y'all new hip-hop fans use is not in line with what is the true essence of what hip hop was. It's not. This new metric that y'all use, y'all will gauge two hip hop artists, two MCs who are engaged in a hip hop beef or battle. Y'all won't go song for song, bar for bar. Because what it sounds like on every single blog that I've seen and listened to since Joe dropped that hour-long rant on his channel yesterday. Y'all have taken everything that he said, dismissed it, in my opinion, based solely on the fact that M has the discography that he has. I keep hearing people reference the Marshall Mathers LP, the second, whatever. Like, what y'all are doing is y'all trying to compare Joe Budden, the artist, his career, his commercial success, compared to what M has done in the past, his legacy, his discography, his status in hip-hop up to now. That's not how you gauge a hip-hop beef. I don't care what your accolades are. If you're going to engage with somebody in a hip-hop beef, what those bars sound like. In 2018, Recovery M is not fucking with Joe Budden. He's just not. And I hate to sound like the typical old hip-hop head, bitter, angry at this new generation of hip-hop, because I understand more than anybody, or as much as anybody, that in order for hip-hop to continue to be successful, it has to continue to progress and move forward. I get that. But this is not the first era or first phase or stage in hip-hop where there's been, you know, new catchy songs, different kind of flows that have been experimented with. This shit has happened in every decade of hip-hop, and those things come and go. The reason why people my age, people in their late 20s, early 30s, and beyond that, still listens to shit that was recorded 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago is because songs were made to have an infinite shelf life back then. I can ride down the street right now playing Reasonable Doubt, which came out in the early 90s. And that shit still bumped like it was just dropped yesterday. Jay fucking forecasted his whole career in that album. And then did everything and materialized his whole career based on the shit that he was saying in Reasonable Doubt. That album was so far ahead of its time that people listen to it now and they're like, damn, this shit's still current. That's the era of hip-hop I come from. So when Joe says shit like, M hasn't really said anything in 10 years and I've been better than you for the last decade, if you're not a Joe Budden fan, cool, I understand that. And that's your perception, that's cool. If you just rock with M just because of what M's status is, I understand that too. Because you're always going to have different types of fans and different things that different fans relate to and what appeals to them. I understand that. That's cool. You know, hip hop is a individual preference based thing. So that's all understandable. But nobody's quoting anything really in the past 10 years from M that's really quotable like that. Back when M was tearing up cannabis, and back when he was dropping, you know, all these different diss records, coming at the whole industry and coming at all these boy bands, yeah, that was Eminem. But there are certain artists, I can name a few, like Lil Wayne, that when they were on drugs and they were like, you know, on this reckless path, destroying their bodies and taking all crazy pills and lean and all types of other crazy shit, that's when they were at their best. And yeah, we got to acknowledge that all the best artists in history had some kind of drug addiction, and you can go across any genre and find that. But the second M got sober and started to recover, which more power to him, you know, you want that. He wants to be around for his daughter. He wants to see himself, you know, grow old. Cool. But ever since that, M hasn't been the same M. In my opinion, Recovery was the last good album from M, because I personally liked the Recovery album. But if y'all not willing to go listen to that hour-long rant that Joe Budden put on his YouTube channel, where he basically broke down the whole history and gave reasons and drew parallels to all the things that happened from the time he signed to M's label and got down with Slaughterhouse till now, the shit is all valid, especially if you were around back then to see that shit as it happened. Now, Joe said a lot of shit that was behind the scenes that people might not have known. But if you followed it from the beginning, Joe's 100% correct. For M to have come in during that era and for him to be a fellow creative, then Joe's right. He 100% should have been more willing to back Slaughterhouse He should have been 100% more willing to get on songs with Slaughterhouse. The same way he was willing to promote and ride with D12, he should have been willing to do the same thing for Slaughterhouse. So if Joe felt like he wasn't about that, then there was no reason for him to stick around on that label. There was no reason for him to stick around in that group. And that's 100% correct. So for him to have issues with him behind that and feel away, you can't be mad at that. Because that man ended that 1 hour and 1 minute long rant by simply saying, yo, fuck your album rollout. If you really serious, you wanna, come at me in a record, you need more than a domestic violence bar to get me out of bed. That shit was 100% true. 100% true. And for the people who knew of all of the legal issues that M had back then, he the last person to throw shots at Joe for domestic violence accusations. The last person. Because all throughout M's content, it's, oh, I'm killing my baby moms, and I'm going to cut her throat and leave her body in the woods. And that type of content is the reason why I don't like M. I don't fuck with his shit. Because it's the content. Me as a hip-hop fan, when I consume hip-hop, and I decide what artists I'm going to follow and what artists I'm going to gravitate towards, I look for a different type of content. It's not just about rhyming words together. So y'all really need to reevaluate the metric that y'all use when y'all gauge these different hip-hop artists and start to associate one person over the other and what class y'all want to put certain people in. At one time, yeah, M was untouchable. At one time, nobody in the industry would even consider coming at him. It's a whole different day. It's a whole different day. And as far as all those other new artists that M mentioned their names, maybe they might not want to come at M. Because the only one I really heard do it so far was MGK. And I fuck with that song. That shit was a little bit hot. That's the type of shit that M was doing back in the day. But I think when it comes to Joe, 2018 M don't want no smoke with Joe. That's just my honest opinion. And when I listen to that hour-long rant, and I'm sure he'll touch more on it when they drop their podcast for this week, I think any true hip-hop fan who really pays attention to more than just a person's status and their discography and how many records they sold and the commercial success they had in hip-hop, I think any real true hip-hop fan would admit, like, yo, y'all overlooking Joe Budden in ways that y'all should do. Because I think if M jumped out the window right now, I don't think that shit would play out the way that a lot of y'all bloggers are saying that it would. And y'all need to knock that shit off. Because y'all killing hip-hop with that bullshit. I just stopped through to let y'all know that. Let me know what y'all think about this one. I'll see y'all on the next one. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. Peace and love.